Participatory development began for some with the exploration of more responsive techniques and approaches at the grassroots level, involving all the stakeholders. For others, it started with the critical analysis of society and the imbalance it generates, leaving the poor voiceless. The growing societal interest in issues such as empowerment, democratization, partnerships and sustainability, all hallmarks of participatory development, has led to a greater focus on participatory monitoring and evaluation, or PME. The participatory approach attempts to give a greater say to the spectrum of voices, to civil society, local governments, communities and the poor, whose voice has not been adequately heard. Participatory monitoring and evaluation entails the continuous collective examination and assessment of a project by the beneficiaries and other stakeholders. This strengthens a results-based approach to development planning, implementation and evaluation.
हमारे देश में पूरी डेवलपमेंट की जो योजनाएं बन रही हैं और डेवलपमेंट की जो प्रोजेक्ट फॉर्मेशन होता है, उस सब में ये देखा जाता है कि प्रोजेक्ट फॉर्मुलेट करने वाले लोग ये प्रोजेक्ट बना के और जब उसको लॉन्च करते हैं, जब उसको शुरू करते हैं, तो उनकी बनाई हुई प्रोजेक्ट में, उनके बनाए हुए एजेंडा में, उनकी बनाई हुई योजनाओं में कितने लोग आते हैं। रियल में ये डेवलपमेंट की पार्टिसिपेटरी प्रोसेस नहीं है। रियल में जो डेवलपमेंट की पार्टिसिपेटरी प्रोसेस होती है वो ये है कि समाज, कम्युनिटीज, समुदाय वो कैसे अपना विकास करना चाहते हैं, उनका विकास का तौर तरीका क्या है, उनकी विकास की अपनी समझ, उनकी विकास की अपनी दृष्टि और दर्शन क्या है और उनकी ज़रूरत क्या है। वो अपनी ज़रूरत के मुताबिक जब अपने कोई प्रोजेक्ट बना के काम शुरू करें और उस काम में सरकार मदद करे, सरकार पार्टिसिपेट करे या जो संस्थाएं हैं वो पार्टिसिपेट करे, तब होता है पार्टिसिपेशन का रियल मतलब।
I want to complicate this notion of participation a little bit. When people say participation means involving the community, when they say participatory monitoring means asking the people who are involved in the project to monitor it, there is a somewhat simplistic assumption behind that the community and people are a homogeneous entity. Now the fact of the matter is that that's not true. Every community has people, different interest groups, people at different levels of the power hierarchy, people whose terms and conditions of participation are in fact very different. There are certain groups who are invariably left out even when technically the community participates. And these are the groups who are at the bottom of every ladder. So you have the women, you have socially marginalized groups, the Dalits, the Adivasis, people with disabilities. You have techniques like PRA, you have various frameworks and methodologies for participatory monitoring which leave out women.
मेरी दृष्टि से ये पीआरए टेक्निक भी रियल पार्टिसिपेशन की तरफ एक कदम तो हो सकती है, लेकिन वो रियल पार्टिसिपेशन नहीं है।
Participation for any grassroots level project should begin with the beneficiary getting involved in identification and design of a project or program. If you involve the stakeholders, particularly the beneficiaries, in project identification, implementation, then you get more value for your money.
In India, as elsewhere, monitoring and evaluation are extremely important. Within these so-called strategic results frameworks, where everybody, whether it's the populations themselves that these programs are to be benefiting, whether it's the UN actors, whether it's national governments, whether it's taxpayers in civil society, everybody would genuinely like to know, has a certain program or project made a difference?
It is not just enough to legislate changes, where I feel India is very dynamic, but how to really evaluate and monitor the changes that are being implemented as a result of the legislation that exists.
The grassroots is the crucible where concepts like participation and its ingredients such as participatory monitoring and evaluation are tried.
Gotaki mela nama nama argolo ila kumi gandadiranga. Morkodandala melveitu mutukam bisilar tongumutu. Morkodandala bada badi mutukam bisilar mangada. Taikodandala melveitu.
Perur temple has a special significance for the local community. Traditionally, mornings for the local devotees began with a dip in the sacred pond in the temple. Today, Perur river that fed the temple pond is dry and parched, with the third successive failure of the monsoons in the region. The agrarian economy of this semi-arid region has been severely affected. It was in this backdrop that the Ministry of Environment and Forests and the UNDP stepped in with a project titled Participatory Agroforestry for Poverty Alleviation and Environmental Restoration in Perur Block.
When the program started, we invited the different members of the community who we thought would have a stake in this program. So we invited panchayat representatives, we invited members from the state government, because this was an agroforestry program and forest was an important part of it. We invited leaders and members of our community-based organization, the Madar Sangams, the Langar Mandrams, and of course the experienced staff of the ashram was there. Together we planned this. We came out with this project entitled Participatory Agroforestry for environmental restoration and poverty alleviation. There are these two important components. Looking at environmental restoration, because there are so many dry lands, so much of dry land here, and poverty alleviation, which is our ultimate outcome, which is the ultimate goal that we want to achieve.
One of the key insights of the kind of work UNDP does is in terms of promoting participatory processes involving different stakeholders in the process of policy formulation. I think this is really something which UNDP has become very good at, and this leads to much greater ownership of the policies when they are subsequently announced, and I am also convinced much better implementation.
When we went in there, there was a preparatory assistance project which had already been done, and that gave us the baseline of what was the income, what was the land use pattern, and we found that there was a large environmental aspect which we could address.
For any project to be implemented effectively, I think you have to have a good knowledge of the area. And this agroforestry project needed us to have a good first-hand knowledge of the existing dry lands. We had problems here. We met with challenges. The panchayat did not actually have maps, and so in parts the PRA exercise allowed us to get a first-hand knowledge and information at the village level. But we also had to check with it. We had to check whether these dry lands, these pieces of dry lands were still available. So we went to the panchayat office, and I remember this conversation with the panchayat president where he said, it's been close to 2 decades since we had the last map of this block drawn. He said, and then he looked at me and said, a challenge could also be an opportunity. He said, can you help through the project in putting this together? And now I'm proud to say that through the project we've actually put together the entire map for Perur block. Another important dimension of this project has been the successful partnership between a research institution and a community-based organization. The IFGTV is a research institution primarily, and it is based in Coimbatore, just 18 kilometers away. Never before had they worked with people who were using their research solutions. And this has been an amazing link, because they have seen how their technology can be transferred, and we have seen how good quality research solutions which are appropriate to our area has made a difference in the lives of our people. And I think this is a model that can be replicated. This partnership of governance structures, of research institutions, of community-based organizations, and of people.
So this was the first attempt. We gave a quality branding material to the farmers, and that was the beginning, and it was a very good success. And with this experience, we got an opportunity of venturing to the NGOs.
The reason we came here today, Anna, was that the farmers have given us a list of trees that they would like to plant this year. So we came in to request you to sort of examine this planting materials that they have identified, and particularly to see if the soil is suitable for these planting materials.
I'll depute Dr. Mohan. He will come and look the site, and we will also take the samples, and we will analyze what is the pH, what is the nutrient status, etc. and all. He will recommend the site-specific species, preferably fast-growing, high-yielding, fruit-yielding, fodder, timber, and also the medicinal plants.
Everybody felt that teak would be the ideal thing. Here was the Institute of Tree Breeding available to give them teak saplings free of cost, and the agro part of it, which would sort of come in between the rows of the teak saplings.
It has been 1 year since the project has been implemented, and we've taken this moment to stop, to pause, and to sort of reconnect with people, the different people who have been involved in the project. We've just had an internal audit, as we call it, with the farmers. We've had 3 rounds of meetings with them as to what they think has been the plus points, the success in the past year. Also to think with them and to see how we want to go forward.
It's a freedom fighter as well as a farmer. Shanmuga is a farmer.
This is Puvatalamma. She is the owner of the farm.
இந்த தண்ணியை எடுத்து ஊத்தக்கூடிய அளவுக்கு வாட்டர் ஃபெசிலிட்டிஸ் இங்க கிடையாது.
Okay. So there are 2 problems here. One is labor. One is, as most of them are labor family. They are supposed to go for outside and earn money. They can't forego their wages while looking after watering.
And the
second one is they don't have a water facility. They can't plant it.
For the last 3 seasons they have not received any rain. Northeast must be utter failure. The average rainfall is per year only 750 mm. So we can't do anything.
Besides the traditional tools of monitoring and evaluation that we have used, which means review meetings, questionnaires, meetings with farmers, we've also used other creative ways of getting more information. We've used members of Pasumai Pade, which is the Green Brigade, wherein we have about 250 children from the 10 villages of Perur block, many of whom are children of the farmers themselves, have them visit farms of their uncles, of their aunties, and to see what's happening to these saplings. This has given us a very real assessment of how our project has gone.
உட்கார்ந்துருக்கறங்களா அந்த மாதிரி இருக்கக்கூடிய மரத்தை எல்லாம் ஒவ்வொண்ணா வெட்டி வெட்டி எடுத்துட்டு போயிட்டா என்ன ஆகும்?
Participatory monitoring, I think, is one critical input which can save participation from being tokenism. Like a lot of people have said, a lot of the time participation means when you're formulating the project, you have a meeting, you call 20 people, which includes men, women, people with disabilities, Dalits, Adivasis, older people, every possible interest group you can think of. You get them to sit in on a meeting where the project is being formulated. You share the project document with them, and that is ownership and that is participation. I think many of us are guilty of this with the best of intentions. But once that project is formulated, it becomes our project. We run it, we monitor it, we evaluate it, we decide how it's going to continue next year. At the most, when we are talking about getting in a few voices of people and so on, then we go and ask people, what do you feel about this project? And that's it.
The first year there was tremendous desire to have teak and casuarina. The trend has been totally changed this year. They have been wanting more fruit trees. And the reason they cite for this is they say, we don't want to wait 20 years to see the benefit. We would rather have more fast yielding high quality materials. This meeting, this evaluation has allowed us to see how better we can implement this project.
The value of documenting such experiences lies in the recognition that participatory monitoring and evaluation goes beyond measuring changes and is also concerned with building people's capacities to improve learning and self-reliance regarding their own development. By thinking of PME as a learning process involving different stakeholders, we can also see how it is used for conflict negotiation, capacity building, partnerships and new forms of mutual accountability and governance.
मॉनिटरिंग के लिए पार्टिसिपेशन बहुत ज़रूरी है. जिस तरह से डेवलपमेंट के कामों को शुरू करना है, जिस दिन से आप अपने प्रोजेक्ट फॉर्मुलेशन करते हैं या जिस दिन से आप किसी काम का निर्णय शुरू करते हैं, उस दिन से लेकर उसमें जो उसके स्टेप्स हैं आपके काम के, उन सारे स्टेप्स को समाज बराबर समझता रहे, देखता रहे. जब समाज उसको समझेगा और देखेगा तो समाज उसको ऑन भी करेगा और समाज को ये रियलाइज भी होगा कि भाई हमने जो काम किया उसमें से ये निकल रहा है, ये उसका आउटपुट है. जब तक समाज को उसका आउटपुट बराबर पता नहीं चलेगा तब तक समाज का उसके साथ अटैचमेंट ही नहीं होगा. इसलिए मॉनिटरिंग जो है वो एक तरह से आपकी पूरी डेवलपमेंट की प्रोसेस में समाज के इन्वॉल्वमेंट को सस्टेनेबल बनाना और आगे तक लेके जाने का एक तरीका है.
What is as on now the monitoring and evaluation system is, outside expert is coming into the project area and measuring the performance with his own predetermined indicators and with his own techniques and tools. But in participatory M&A is all the stakeholders joining together and they determine the indicators, okay, what to be monitored and what way it has to be monitored. Everyone can analyze it. Even as illiterate farmer can understand it easily and give the data and report, take decisions also.
प्रोजेक्ट की सक्सेस होने का सबसे बड़ा इंडिकेटर ये है कि समाज अपने काम को मॉनिटर करके बता रहा है कि नहीं, और वो जो मॉनिटरिंग के रिजल्ट उसको सामने आ रहे हैं उन पे वो रिएक्ट कर रहा है कि नहीं, उनको सोच के अपने काम में आगे उत्साह से वो जुड़ रहा है कि नहीं. ये उसका एक तरह से इंडिकेटर भी है.
If you are able to create the space within a development project of telling the people who are involved, you can monitor it, you can tell us what you think is going right and what is wrong, and we make a commitment to abide by what you are saying. That is the link between participatory monitoring and planning, which is easy to talk about but very difficult to implement. It's really handing over control of the project, which implies control of resources and control of outcomes to the community which is the most affected by that project.
आप हमारे समाज को मॉनिटरिंग करने का मौका दीजिए, वो आपको मॉनिटरिंग करने का तरीका भी बताएगा और रियल मॉनिटरिंग के इंडिकेटर क्या होंगे वो भी बताएगा.
It's a very good idea. Participatory monitoring and evaluation method is very different from conventional method because it is very applicable to grassroots level. எங்களுக்கு இந்த மாதிரி ஃபாலோ அப் இருந்துச்சுன்னா கண்டிப்பாக நம்ம ஸ்கீம்ஸ் எல்லாம் சக்ஸஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும். ஆனால் கவர்மெண்ட் இந்த மாதிரி அவங்க யோசனை பண்ணினாங்கன்னா இட்ஸ் வெரி ஹெல்ப்ஃபுல் டு அஸ். நாங்கள் பீப்புளுக்கு நிறைய செய்யலாம், நிறைய ஒர்க்ஸ் வி கேன் டு.
ஏலேல முடிஞ்சுதம்மா ஐலல முடிஞ்சுதம்மா ஏலல பகவத்தினி ஏலலோ வாசமின்னே.
Let us now see how issues like participatory monitoring and evaluation are handled at the institutional level.
In a large populous country like India, M&E is a very important aspect that still requires much development. In general, it is an important matter simply because given the poverty, given the number of government projects you have in India, monitoring and evaluation of the success or failure of the projects is extremely important.
The Panchayati Raj institution itself is not perfect so far. In many states they don't exist. In some states where they exist, they are not up to the mark. And therefore the full involvement of the villages are not in the decision making process.
Today, if we find that democracy is lacking in the areas because of the lack of participation of the people, awareness of the people. If the masses are enlightened, masses are aware, only then democracy can become a successful form of the government.
So I think it would be very cynical to say that the government doesn't believe in participation. It's more a case of not having the tools, not having the methodologies, a lot of the time not having the time to allow a project to go through the cycle of action and then reflection on that action, retooling, redirection, mid-course correction to respond to that reflection, and then the next cycle of action. All those again are factors which push for a more managerial, technocratic kind of a mode to development.
There is no particular kind of challenge that is taken up in terms of regular evaluation of the success of social transformation that these projects are supposed to give out.
Well, Planning Commission has a program evaluation organization which conducts the evaluation of major government schemes. But Planning Commission does not get directly involved in monitoring. It gets the feedback from the line ministries which implement the projects.
We have two kinds of monitoring. Firstly, of course, there is a very standard kind of a government practice that you monitor projects by through the means of monitoring the financial expenditure and physical landmark achievements.
The point of these programs too, which after all it's currency of ideas, I guess you would say, is to take what is best practice and what are the lessons learned. Can this program be replicable, and what policy impact has it had?
UNDP and Shanti Ashram will not go on eternally with the project. We have to stop somewhere, and so I think we'll have to look at the angle of sustainability. And here the Panchayat representatives, who've been another main stakeholder in this project, they've come in. They've helped us scale up this micro level experience into policy. We're looking at the possibility of creating 10 models across payroll block. The self-help groups and the women, essentially many of whom are farm laborers themselves, are going to be empowered with training, with planting materials to take charge of these models.
So how is participatory monitoring and evaluation better than the conventional practice of monitoring and evaluation?
A participatory monitoring process can actually be a three-way interface between the community, the managers of the project, and the people who designed the project, the donors. It can actually be a genuine space for learning. It gives people the opportunity to say what they think about the project and how they've benefited. It gives donors the opportunity to listen to these viewpoints which otherwise they would not get.
Rather than have this top-down kind of monitoring of initiatives, if you have participatory monitoring, then the results of that are likely to be much better in terms of improving the design and implementation of programs in the future.
India is of course recognizing the utility of monitoring and evaluation, the kind of change that is sweeping the world now. It has already swept the OECD countries. It is now sweeping the Asian countries.
People's self-empowerment, people's dignity, people taking control of their own destiny. That to me is what participatory monitoring and evaluation is all about.